founder of Alive Holistic Health Clinic and author of Pathways to Pregnancy. She's right here. And today you are going to be part of my live post number 51. So I'm really proud that we've gotten here so far, and I have an amazing guest tonight. I'm very pleased to have her. It's really an honor. Her name is Lisa Marie, and she is the founder and has a radio live broadcast called Fertility Friday. Sorry, not live, recorded. But let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a fertility awareness educator who has been charting her own menstrual cycles using the fertility awareness method for the past 15 years. She's passionate about helping women specifically, to develop body literacy by understanding their natural cycles. And after struggling with excessively heavy and painful menstrual periods for years, Lisa discovered the connection between health and fertility firsthand. Her personal experience of overcoming Hashimoto's diagnosis and uterine fibroids has influenced her practice immensely. Lisa created her weekly radio show, the Fertility Friday podcast, which I just mentioned. And she does that to connect women with a deeper understanding of how fertility and overall health are connected and intertwined with the menstrual cycle. So I am very pleased to have you. So let me just bring you up. Here's Lisa.
Hi.
Thank you for being here and being here tonight. And I just listened to an episode that you did. And I don't know if it was your latest one, but you were talking about the Ovulation Predictor Kit. So we were going to speak about one thing, but I think it really ties in together. And a lot of people who will be watching this are familiar with Ovulation Predictor Kits. So I really want your expertise about Ovulation Predictor Kits, because it's a good guideline, but sometimes, as you had mentioned in your podcast, you could actually miss the boat. So I would love for you to talk about, how about the benefits and then the insufficiencies about Ovulation Predictor Kit. And then after, we can talk about the actual fertility awareness, which is what we do in Chinese medicine anyway, but in a different realm. But I would love to hear your side of the picture. So tell me about Ovulation Predictor Kits.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you. So with Ovulation Predictor Kits, I think it ties into fertility awareness, because my main challenge and issue with them is that they don't help you to learn more about your body. They give you the impression that in order to optimize your chances for conception, you need to have sex as close to ovulation as possible, which is actually not exactly true. So with the fertility awareness method, you're able to identify your fertile window by paying attention to your cervical mucus. And the way our bodies are designed, your cervical mucus actually your body starts producing cervical mucus several days before ovulation. And it does that on purpose because cervical mucus has the ability to keep sperm alive for, up to 5 days. And so the best time to have sex are the days that you actually have cervical mucus before ovulation, so that the sperm is already there by the time you ovulate. This is the whole point of it. So what happens when you are using Ovulation Predictor Kits, the way that it works, so for anyone who doesn't know what they're testing for, Ovulation Predictor Kits are testing for your luteinizing hormone surge, so your LH surge. And so what happens is, during your menstrual cycle, your ovaries start making eggs and they start producing estrogen. And once your estrogen peaks, it feeds back to your brain. And that's when we ovulate. So your pituitary releases luteinizing hormone, and then you ovulate about a day or two later. And so what happens when you're only using an Ovulation Predictor Kit is it's picking up that LH surge. And so if you did have several days of mucus before that, which you typically would in a healthy cycle, a lot of the women that I've worked with, they are actually waiting. They're waiting until they got that little positive to have sex. So they're not having the sex and they only have the sex after it turns positive. And
Yes.
so they're missing out on several fertile days. And then the other part of it is that the ovulation predictor kit doesn't confirm that ovulation has actually happened. It's testing for this marker that typically happens before. But there's a lot of different reasons why a woman's ovulation might be delayed. So if there's a really stressful event, or even in women with PCOS, they have a high LH, so they might have all these false positives. And so if you're relying primarily on that, then you're missing some information.
So let's back that up, just because not everybody understands what PCOS is, right? So PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and not all cases, but a lot of cases, their menstrual cycle are all over the place. It can be very irregular to even absent. And so it's very difficult to use these OPK. That's the short term for ovulation predictor kits. And it can be very expensive, right? Because you have no idea when your your ovulation is going to be, if at all, if it's coming, because you have irregular cycles. So here you're using the strips, and I don't know offhand. Do you actually know offhand how much a kit costs? I forget.
I think they're around 20.
Yeah. Oh, we're losing your voice again, your audio.
Is it back? Is it okay?
So repeat that, about $20 or so?
I think maybe $20, $25, but it depends. Some of them are more expensive because there's fancier ones too.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, and some of them you can connect it to your, I think your phone or something, right? An app. You use it with an app, so that costs even more money. So it could be like upwards to like $50 per cycle. And so if let's say if a kit gives you like 8 strips, then you're going to miss out and not even get your ovulation if you have something like PCOS, a polycystic ovarian syndrome, and if at all you're ovulating. So it doesn't necessarily work with everybody, right?
Well, yeah. And I mean, it also reinforces the myths about the menstrual cycle. One of them being that you ovulate on day 14. So typically if you're seeing, a doctor, they might instruct you to start testing on day 8, but you're expecting that you're going to ovulate on day 14. So I've seen it happen where you actually, you start testing and then you get that positive LH surge, but maybe something happens and you don't ovulate. Because when you're tracking your cycles with the fertility awareness method, you're paying attention to your mucus, you're taking your temperature in the morning. And so after you ovulate, your mucus goes away and your temperature rises and stays high. So this is your waking body temperature. And so you can use that to confirm that ovulation has happened. So I've had clients where they had the positive surge, they had sex, but we didn't see the temperature rise because perhaps something happened to delay their ovulation. And so I feel that there is a place for ovulation predictor kits, but I feel like it needs to happen in conjunction with an understanding of your body so that you really know what's going on first. And then when you know what's going on first, you can actually use the ovulation predictor kit, and it can, if you want to, and it can give you additional information. But a lot of women who chart their cycles, once they start to understand how their body works, they kind of realize that they don't need the ovulation predictor kit anymore.
Yes. Yeah. And that raises a very good point. And, with regard, so then let's back it up for those who have not done basal body temperatures. So I think there's a couple of important pieces for doing BBT. So that's the short form, like a BBT 101 crash course.
Yeah.
Right. So let's do that right now, right here, because not everybody will want to do it. And I will say, because I personally, and at our clinic at Alive Holistic Health, we see women day in, day out, and have been doing it for years in terms of trying to conceive. So sometimes doing the basal body temperature day in, day out can actually become a bit obsessive. So I think it's a great tool initially, for sure, just to track and see where you're at with your fertility, and to be self-aware and learn about your cycles, and then hopefully to rectify them if it's not what we call a biphasic curve. So again, what does that mean? Well, through a menstrual cycle, in the time before ovulation, your basal body temperature, your temperature should be a little lower on average compared to on the backside, which is after ovulation, correct?
Yes. And so with basal body temperature, What it really does. There's a bit of feedback. I don't know. I hear that. But
There's reverb.
yeah. Okay, I'll take out the headphones.
Yeah, I think that's better.
Okay. So when you're taking your temperature, basically the only thing that it's giving you, the only information it's telling you in a sense, is that you have ovulated. So one of the myths is that it tells you when you're going to ovulate, or you can use it to predict ovulation. It doesn't do that. It rises after ovulation. So that's the first thing. The crash course is that, you want to, every morning after you wake up, after you've had at least 5 hours of consecutive sleep, your basal body temperature, your metabolism resets. So the BBT measures your metabolism. And so in order to get an accurate temperature after you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is you just put the thermometer in your mouth. You want to leave it in there for 10 minutes to get an accurate temperature. And that's pretty much it, essentially. You just take your temperature every day.
Okay, so you're telling people to put it in for 10 minutes, but how about those digital ones where it beeps?
You leave it in for 10 minutes, and then you push the button at the 10-minute mark. And then it'll give you the reading.
Even for the digital?
Yeah, because it's probably more information than we have time for in the live. But what I find is that with my clients, when they actually do start to take it for that period of time, they get a more accurate reading, and it's easier to decipher that shift. Mm-hmm. But essentially, what's helpful about the BBT? So I don't think it's helpful to stress over it. But what's helpful is what it does. It helps you to confirm that you have ovulated, because once you have ovulated, your progesterone levels rise, and your progesterone is connected with your metabolism, and that's what causes that sustained shift. So once you get in the hang of it, you can use it as a reliable way to confirm that you have. But it doesn't help you to time
you're cutting out
when you're fertile.
Okay, yes, that's right. So it doesn't time when you're fertile, because really you look at the basal body temperature, it's like a graph. And so you get your information after your whole cycle is done. Yeah. Really is what it does, right? And so through our experience then, we would love it if every woman will have that lovely, the biphasic curve, right? But oftentimes what will happen is that there can be anomalies. And in Chinese medicine, we talk about pathologies within even looking at the charting. So it provides us lots of information. And what we do is try to rectify it. So with acupuncture, herbal medicine, lifestyle, dietary changes, and I'm sure you do that with your clients in terms of dietary and lifestyle changes, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then you see the changes, which is so awesome. And it's like, what a great way to connect with yourself and feel more in control and taking charge of your fertility, which is basically what this is from, right? Is that right? The fertility awareness? Who is that?
Taking charge of your fertility is the most popular resource. But ultimately, this is a method that's been around for a really, really long time, at least 50 years. So she derived her information from, the Cretan method and all the different in the background. I feel like one of the most important questions for a woman listening is really like, okay, so you're telling me ovulation predictor kits aren't necessarily the best way, to time everything. So how do I time it? Like, so tell me how, like, when are the days that I should be having sex when I want to conceive? And I feel like that is really, that's really the heart of the fertility awareness method that I teach, especially because the center of the method, or the sign the primary sign, as I call it, is cervical mucus. And so for anyone who's watching and they've never really checked their cervical mucus, or they don't really know what we're talking about, if you've ever had one of those days where you're sitting there, maybe you're at work and you feel kind of wet, assuming you're not on hormonal contraceptives, and you think, oh man, I got my period early, and then you go to the bathroom and there's no period. That's a common experience of women. Or if you've ever noticed, the sticky stuff in your underwear. I've talked to so many women who just thought they were really weird for years. There's many women who thought that they had recurrent infections, and they would go to the doctor, and then they would do all of these tests for STIs, and they would come back negative. And so it happens, but that's your cervical mucus.
Yeah.
And if I could change one thing, every teenage girl would learn that it's normal, it's a healthy, just part of your menstrual cycle, and it coincides with ovulation. So the simplest thing to do is to pay attention to your mucus. So you can do that by paying attention when you wipe, when you go to the bathroom every day, or you can really get into it and learn fertility awareness in more depth. But ultimately, when you have that feeling of wetness, when you wipe and you feel that it's slippery, when you see stretchy mucus that looks like raw egg whites, those are the days that you want to have the sex. And you can use that in conjunction with ovulation predictor kits but don't make sure that you're not waiting until the positive to have sex. Have sex when you see the mucus. And then if you like using the ovulation predictor kits, then use that as well to help you pinpoint ovulation.
Yeah, I think that's a really wise advice. And I think that you're totally right. A lot of women literally wait until the smiley face comes on from the ovulation predictor kits. And yes, you will miss the boat, especially if the cervical mucus is not timed within that range, because that slippery cervical mucus is what the sperm will swim best in, right? I mean, we have different stages of a cervical mucus as well. And sometimes it's actually considered hostile for sperm. And other times when you're fertile, that's when I call it like super swimmers, right? So it helps to create channels to allow them to flow through, and then they can get to the fallopian tubes where it sits ready and perched and ready to go, waiting for the egg to drop. So I think that's a really great point. And any other points of advice that you want to add in? Do you think anything else?
I would say that it's really important to become aware of your body and to really get at some of those myths. So if your cycle isn't exactly 28 days every single month, it doesn't automatically mean you have an irregular cycle. Ovulation does not happen on day 14 all the time. So it's more important to pay attention to your body's signs, what's actually happening, than to ever get into the habit of assuming that something is happening on a particular day. Even in my clients who have quite regular and consistent cycles, they never ovulate on the exact same day every time. Exactly. And that's normal because we are not machines. I don't know about you, but I don't plug myself into the wall at night. So we're not machines.
No, and that's a really, really great point, because sometimes people will use the ovulation predictor kit once and then assume that every cycle it's going to be the exact same time. So they're time it towards that. And so maybe half the time they're actually missing the boat, right?
Well, so if you are literally having sex on day 14 every month because you're trying to conceive, it is very possible that you could do that and miss the window every time. So there are, as much as it doesn't make sense because we were always taught that we could get pregnant on every day, if you are doing that type of thing and you're only having sex on like 2 days based on your, I ovulate on day 14, you could literally be missing it every month and basically using the fertility awareness method for birth control.
Yes, right, exactly. What you don't want. No. So advice, trust yourself, learn about your body, look at the signs, feel the signs. And in fact, and unfortunately, I mean, this is a sad part of it. Like when people have been trying for a long time, oftentimes it's like, I don't want to do it. And that's exactly what you don't want to do, right? Like how can you create a baby when your body's like, I'm resigned. I don't want to do this. And I'll just do it because it's a technical thing, and I'll do it in order to have a baby. So it's coming back and perhaps, getting into yourself and learning to be more intimate with your partner. So then when the time naturally comes, you actually have an increase in libido rather than this libido that has like plummeted to like 0 when you've been trying for so long, right? So it's focusing less on the structure and really being with your body and like listening to that. Do you agree?
I do agree. And I feel like one of the biggest benefits of getting a sense of what's happening in your cycles and learning about mucus is that because I've spoken to women, and I'm sure you have too, that say like, I've been having sex from day 8 to day 18 for the last 2 years or whatever. That's a lot of days for a lot of kind of forced sex. Like I'm all for sex, but like, so with the fertility awareness method, when you're tracking mucus, depending on your cycles, in a healthy cycle, we would expect to see about 3 to 6 days of mucus. You might have a little more, you might have a little less, but it gives you a defined time. Like, this is when we're trying, so that you can have lots of sex outside of that time without any expectation and just enjoy your partner.
Right. Very good. And then, so I'll add to this, but there are pathologies. So some women do not have, like one woman even today says, oh, I don't ever see my cervical mucus. So it's like, okay, so that's something that we need to address, and there are things that we can do to help it, right? So that's another way to check in with yourself. Well, what kind of a state is my body in? And use it as a marker, not as a permanent state of being. Because as I always say in my book, I think our bodies have this capacity to heal itself. And so what you see today, even if it looks really off, doesn't have to be a permanent thing. Like every cycle is going to look that way. And there are things that you can do and people that you can consult, like Lisa, like coming to our clinic at Alive Holistic Health. And I see Shauna DeRue, she's a naturopathic doctor, and people can consult naturopathic doctors as well. There's lots of different people out there that knows what we're doing and like can help guide you through this process and make it easier and less of a struggle and make it more hopeful.
I completely agree. And I love the work that you do.
Thank you. Well, mutual love here. Let me So, and I have to say that, mutual love, especially because you're also a Torontonian, and I podcast reaches far and wide.
Yes. Thank you.
And I also want to thank you for interviewing me on your episode number 96, where I spoke about my book, Pathways to Pregnancy, and we were deconstructing about your infertility diagnosis and then about poor ovarian reserve, and just kind of like debunking that myth about a state of permanence, back to that. And then looking at practical ways of managing stress, and then about Chinese medicine of itself.
I loved that interview, by the way. Oh. It was like, yes, you're wonderful. I'm not just saying that. I still think about some of the things that we talked about, it's like you gave me, I think my favorite part of that interview was when we talked, well, I don't know if that's my favorite because there's many, but when you talked about the nocebo effect, the power of words, like the power of, if a doctor tells you like you have, permanent ovarian failure, the power of that, and really deconstructing that diagnosis and giving women hope. I feel like that's so, anyway, so there were so many nuggets, but that was one of my favorites.
Thank you so much for that. And, that's funny that you say that. I've been going around some fertility clinics in Ontario, and I went to BC, and they just ate that up. And in fact, Lauren Brown, I don't know if you're watching, but if you are, he is the founder of Metagogy Seminars, as well as he founded the Integrative Fertility Symposium, and he's run it for 3 years now. But he caught wind that I spoke at the fertility clinic that he is associated with in Vancouver, BC. And he's like, what did you say? They loved you, right? And so really, for practitioners watching and for patients watching, it is about, let's have an impact on even the providers, because unfortunately, when you go to fertility clinics, really, they're not there to give you good news, unfortunately. And it's like, well, I'm trying to teach them to help other women and discuss the nocebo effect, the negative impact that they have on women and couples seeking them. So thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome. Love it.
Why don't you tell us about Fertility Friday?
Well, Fertility Friday is a weekly podcast where I share information on all things fertility. And so primarily I talk about fertility awareness method, but we go much deeper than that, because what we're really focusing on is connecting you with the knowledge of how intimately your menstrual cycle is connected to your health. When you start watching it, you can gain so much information from your cycle, as you know, Mary, because that's a central part of Chinese medicine. And so ultimately, I want to connect you with all of the things that we weren't told in junior high about our bodies. So I would invite you to check it out. You can search for Fertility Friday on iTunes, and you can go to the website fertilityfriday.com, and you can snag a copy of my free ebook, where the is your period, where I share Yeah, that's what it's called. But that's where I share just information about how to bring your cycles back more, healthily, if you will. So fertilityfriday.com/ebook. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share about that.
Well, of course, I think it's really important, and I think it's important information for all women trying to go through this difficult stage in life. Really, it is. And so as much resource as possible is important. And so I want to sign off now because, as I always say, people on Facebook have like attention deficit, right?
Yeah.
Long. So we're going to sign off. But in the meantime, next Wednesday night, I'll actually, one of my patients says, you know what? I like surprises. So I was going to announce what I was going to do, but I'm going to surprise you. So join in next Wednesday, Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. Check it out. Be here, be square. And check out my book, Pathways to Pregnancy, online, anywhere. And we shall see you soon. Have a great night. Thanks for Lisa.
Oh, thank you. It's so funny because now my son is in the basement and it like literally never happens. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to end off the broadcast. So thank you.
Okay.
See you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for having me.
You're not signing off is the problem.